Good evening. It's Tuesday, my favorite night of the week. I get to come on and speak to you about whatever I like that may or may not help you guys that are watching. What you've been doing this weekend over the bank holiday. Have you had nice weather? It's been lovely in Scotland. Dan and I spent 4 solid hours in the yard on Saturday morning, so a total of 8 hours, sweeping up the sawdust that had been created by the guys who were fitting my fire doors. They did a fantastic job and left a fantastic mess. So it took us a long time to get that yard back to normal and clear out all the drains and get rid of all the rubbish. So yeah, we were dedicated on Saturday morning. I think that's what killed me for the weekend. So I hope your bank holiday weekend was somewhat better than mine. I spent the rest of it recovering from Saturday morning. Hey ho, we had nice weather, can't complain. Love it when the sun comes out and you can get outside and do stuff outside. It's just so good, and the dogs can be out with me. So we've got 1 or 2 dropped on, so I'm gonna start talking to you tonight about writing a book, whether you want to or not. So for those of you that don't know me that are watching, I'm Mandy Nicholson, and I am the Creative Genius Consultant, and I'm an artist, I'm an author, and I help creative women to launch, grow, and scale their businesses and make more money. I struggled when I first wrote my book to call myself an author, which I do easily now, but I struggled at the start. I'd already written 1 book. When my dad died, part of my healing through that journey, and it was in this series of unfortunate events, was to write a diary. And at the end of that journey, when he died, I published the diary called Cancer Diary of a Daughter, and all the proceeds from the sales of that diary went to cancer research. So I'd written a book before, but hadn't really thought of myself as an author. And then that story, my dad's death, became a bigger story. It became part of a year that completely changed my life, completely changed it in every way, shape, and form that you can imagine. And it was that year where I lost everything. And it was a hell of a journey, a real journey. But it took me a long time to be ready to tell my story. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about tonight. People say that everybody's got a book in them, and I believe genuinely that everybody has got a book in them. I meet some amazing, fascinating people with great stories to tell. Lives are fascinating. What happens to us during our lives is fascinating. How our imagination works, how we connect the dots of what's happened and what we've learned from it. So I do think that a lot of us have a book in us. It may be a short story or a series of short stories. It may be that you want to write blogs and be published on a weekly or monthly basis, writing really great blogs. It might be that you've got a fantasy or a horror story or something going on in your head where you've connected the dots of characters and events and circumstances that makes a story. Maybe it's a story that you've formed as you've grown through life. Maybe you just want to tell your story. Maybe you've got a self-development book in you, a how-to guide, a book of whatever it is that you've learned in life. So I wanted to talk to you about how this came about, The Life I Won, how I wrote this story. And some of you may have heard me talk about this before. And I'm very proud now when I say I'm Mandy Nicholson, I'm a creative genius consultant, artist, and author. I'm very proud that I've got 1 book published with a major publisher and 2 in the pipeline. But there was a time where I just struggled to say that word, author, because I sat down and I wrote a book, and I did it with structure and with planning, but never really sat down and thought, I'm an author now. I just did it. The second book I've approached in a completely different way. But what is it that triggers you to start writing your story? Because I sat on that story for almost 10 years before I was ready to write it. I had to absorb and learn the lessons. I had to create the narrative in my head and understand how I could communicate that to other people in the best possible way without hurting anybody too much that had been involved in that story. That was a big job to do. And I think this is why a lot of people hold back from writing the book that's in them, writing their story, writing their truth, whatever it is that you want to share with the world. A lot of people hold back because they don't know how to write that story. So how I started with mine was I decided that I wanted to slightly fictionalize my own story so that I could change names, change event time scales slightly, change things enough so that it was a work of fiction, and make sure that I could protect people and make sure that nobody was going to sue me more than anything. And the rest of the people that would recognize themselves in there, I asked their permission to use their story and their name, and they gave it willingly. So I think when you're writing a book, the first thing that you've got to do, my top tip to you, is to just start with a piece of paper and a pen and write down, what is the story? What do you want to do? How do you know? Let's start by saying, what do I want the story to be about? What is the story? So is it fiction? Is it, fantasy? Is it horror? Is it true crime or a crime novel, detective novel? Is it a short story? Is it a blog? What is it that you want to write? First of all, I think it's important to identify that. If you want to write a novel, a fiction novel, then that's your starting point. What is that novel going to be about? What's the message? All stories have three things: a beginning, an introduction to what's going to happen, the starting point; a middle, which is the content of the story, the characters, the places, the timescales, the timelines; and then an end, where you've got to leave your reader either wanting more, ready for the next book, or satisfied with the result of the ending of the story. So you've got to have an idea of what the structure of the story or the book is going to be about. If you're taking people on a historical journey, you've got to have a timeline. And how is that timeline going to evolve? Who's involved in it? So writing a book is about starting and saying, this is the story I want to tell. Here's the beginning, middle, and end. This is the message that I want to convey to the readers. This is what I want them to feel like. And this is what I want them to say at the end about my book. After that, you need a whole separate training on how to structure a book, how to structure paragraphs, chapters, sentences, that sort of thing. You need to get something that says, I can do this in a structured way. Now, did I do that for this book? No. But I did. I did it without the training. I sat down and I said, right, okay, what happened in what order? Who came in at what place? Where was I? How were they connected? Where are they going to show up elsewhere in the book? How many chapters? So this book, I think, has around 67 chapters, small chapters, because it was a fast-paced 12 months of things happening. To me, really fast-paced, really quite stressful, and I wanted that to come through in the way that the book was written. So I wrote lots of short chapters, bringing in lots of different characters, bringing in lots of different timelines and events into the book that actually happened. But then I had to change them to make it a book of fiction. So you do need to be prepared for what is your story and how you're going to structure your story. Why are you writing your story? That's really important. Why? I wanted to write The Life I Want so that the people that were reading it felt like there was something to keep going for, that there was hope, to inspire other people to not give up. That's the reason that I wrote The Life I Want, because despite having all the worst things you could imagine happen to me in a period of 12 months, I kept going. And I thought, if I share that story with the world and somebody reads it out there and they go, I can keep going now because this person did, then that was worth the time that it took me to write this book. So The Life I Won tells the story of my life, of how I had everything. I was a senior leader in retail with a 6-figure salary, company car, nice little chocolate box cottage in the country, married with 2 children, 2 dogs, had 2 cars, really the perfect idyllic lifestyle, had savings, had pension, you name it. Everything was perfect from the outside, but I'd created a perfect storm without knowing it, with some of the decisions that I'd made along the way. And a car crash triggered a series of unfortunate events that happened to me over the space of 12 months. It was the car crash that changed everything. It literally was like cracking an egg on my world. The egg cracked, the contents spilled out, and everything changed for me in the space of 12 months. So you have to read the book to get the detail of the story, because I can't describe to you the detail of this story. You've got to read the book to get the detail. But in summary, I was driving to work when I had the car crash, the egg cracked, and I ended up losing my decades-long career in retail. And I lost my 13-year marriage, and I lost all of my money. I ended up bankrupt, lost my relationship with my sister for a while because she was part of the reason that I ended up bankrupt. My dad died of cancer in a very short period of time. My son was diagnosed with autism. This was all in the space of 12 months. And just as I felt like I was getting back on rails, I was made homeless. And I ended up in a council house for the first time in my life with no money, £30 in my bank. I was only allowed a car up to the value of £1,000. So I bought a £700 Suzuki Swift, from going having a company car to having a £700 Suzuki Swift that you could hear a mile away. And I had to rebuild my life. And this is what The Life I Won. And the reason I call it The Life I Won was because in losing everything, and I mean everything, I realized what I had. And it was like the universe had taken everything away in order for me to realize that I had all I needed to rebuild my life. So book 1, The Life I Won, takes you to where I have that realization. Book 2, I'm halfway through writing now, is called The Life I Created, and it tells you how I rebuild my life. And book 3, I'm actually living book 3 right now. I'm reading the book you gave me. Thank you, Penny. So you see how I've told you a series of unfortunate events there that happened to me over the course of 12 months in literally 3 minutes. I've summarized my book in 3 minutes. You should be able to summarize whatever you want to write in a very short space of time. If you're writing a blog, you should be able to summarize it in 30 seconds. If you're writing a short story, you should be able to summarize it in a minute. A whole novel can be summarized in a couple of minutes, like I just have. Told you the core of the story. So if you're ready to write something, think about what it is you want to tell the reader. You should be able to describe it in a couple of sentences. Okay? And don't avoid it, because I know that everybody has some literary genius in them of some sort. It is about getting over the fear of calling yourself an author, of putting pen to paper or fingers on the keyboard and starting to write. When I had decided to write my story, this book, I sat down one weekend, had decided where I wanted to take it, where it wanted to start, and I literally poured 18,000 words onto the pages over one weekend. I sat and I just couldn't stop. It just came. It had taken 10 years to get there, but because I learned to summarize that story in those few sentences, I was able to just pour the detail of the story onto the pages. And I believe that everybody can do that when the time is right. But you're never going to be at the right time or in the right place unless you start. And to start, you need to start writing down what that story is. So I hope that watching this tonight, I've gone, look, I'm just a normal bird from Manchester, and I wrote my story. I'm now published by a major publishing house, and I'm on a 3-book deal with Austin Macaulay Publishers. And that was because I self-published on Amazon, which is free, by the way, and not that difficult to do. And then I pitched it into publishers, and I was picked up by Austin Macaulay. The time was right. It was the right book for them. And they've signed me on a 3-book deal, which is fantastic for me. It doesn't happen like that for everybody. It really doesn't. But you can self-publish your book and self-market your book if you are ready to write something. Some of the best-selling books on Amazon are in the short stories section, collections of short stories or short stories of around 25 to 35,000 words, which is about a third of that book, so maybe 100 pages. So it's not out with your capabilities to become an author. As soon as you've published a book, you're an author. You're as good as anybody else. Not everybody will read your story and love it, but some people may read it and absolutely love it. And it may be life-changing for them. And many people have said that about my book, that it has been life-changing for them, that they've read it, they've loved it, and it has been life-changing for them. There's women that have messaged me and gone, I read your book and decided to do something different with my life. That makes everything worthwhile. That's why I did it. So don't hold yourself back. Please, if you are thinking of writing anything, you're thinking about stepping into picking up pen and paper or keyboard, do it. Just start. I've got a couple of posts going out on this in my group, Creative Genius Corner. You can buy my book, by the way, in link in the comments, The Life I Won. I think there's a link there where you can listen to me reading the first 2 chapters to get a taster of it. It's not available on audiobook. It is available on Kindle, paperback and hardback, but not on audiobook yet. You can buy it in Waterstones. It's in all the universities and the libraries, which I'm really proud of, actually. Remember, I'm just a bird from Manchester, and I've got a book that's in Waterstones, libraries and universities, and that's selling through a major publisher. It was worth putting pen to paper and writing my story for me to be able to say that now, that I am Mandy Nicholson, creative genius consultant, artist, and author. It's a nice thing to do, and I think you can do it too. So if you want to ask any questions on that, please ask them in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you are thinking of writing a book, you can always message me if you've got any questions that you want to ask. I'm always happy if I've got time to answer them. So that was a bit of a self-indulgent live tonight, talking about writing, because I love it. And I just every now and again like to throw a bit of a wild card into my lives. And this was it tonight, to talk about my book and talk about writing so that you could think about writing your story. Next week, back to normal service, talking about business for creatives. I've just come out of a 5-day challenge, which was amazing. Did a masterclass last night. I'm absolutely exhausted. I'm off for the rest of the week. My son is 18 this week. My dog is 15 next week. So in terms of birthdays, it's a big time for me over the next week. And I'm going to see Sonic the Hedgehog 2 tomorrow night in Carlisle with my son. So, and I'm going out for a Greek meal on Saturday night with him. So have a wonderful week, all of you. I will see you same time, same place next Tuesday evening with whatever topic is on my agenda next week. Have a wonderful week and go really gently. See you soon.